Hi everybody, Armored Pants here, and I have another video for you in the American line. This is the Tier 6 TD, the Hellcat, and we're going to have a complete guide as always. The timing of this I think is pretty good because the Hellcat recently got a very good buff in update 7.5. So now we have a chance to look at all of those new tech specs, statistics and tactics that accompany it. As always, if you're not subscribed, please hit subscribe and give us a like and share too if you can. Before we get into the tech spec proper, again, just another reminder that we recently opened up the Discord channel. Thanks to Economics Mate for that. Good on you, mate. Bloody legend. And come join us there. You'd be very welcome. Now, there will be a link in the description, by the way. So before that, we're going to have a look at the tech spec of this tank. We're going to use blitzhanger.com. But I thought, it'd be good to talk about this tank in terms of its history. It's a very historic TD. It was actually, if you can believe this, the best US tanker TD of World War II. It had the highest kill to loss ratio of any vehicle produced, and this success led it to also appear in the Korean War as well. So the Hellcat was indeed a phenomenal piece of equipment. It was lightly armoured, had its own chassis. It was the only TD of the era that had its own bespoke designed chassis. It fought across all World War II theatres in the Pacific. You're looking at footage here from the Western Front in Normandy, 1944, etc. and into Belgium. But let's have a look at the Blitz setup now. So, I would set up in provisions, I would set it up with Coke, case of Coke and improved fuel. This maxes out the performance of the tank, which is very important. Top gun is 90mm gun. Gives you 175mm of pen with AP. APCR gives you 243mm, and you get 45mm of pen with HE. They go up to 184, 255 and 50 if you run calibrated shells. I wouldn't, because these pen numbers with gun rammer are excellent at tier 6 anyway. Muzzle velocity is 1109 meters per second with AP and HE, and APCR is going to give you 1386 meters per second, so it's pretty decent as well for a tier 6. And then, as you can expect, the gun index is really high. It's 17. Mobility index is 11.3. The gun index, by the way, that's like tier 9 level gun index. So the gun handling in this tank is fantastic. Mobility index now is way higher than most medium tanks, and by the way, that is like tier 9 medium tank mobility as well. Gun depression is 10 degrees, 20 degrees in elevation, so you got super gun alignment too. So you can go hold down in this tank. It does 65 kilometers per hour and has a super power to weight ratio. It does 15 in reverse, and that of course is one of the key factors in delivering that absolutely superlative mobility index. Concealment numbers, so at a tank which has a view range of 276 meters, you're going to get spotted up 152 meters running camo net. Your own view range is 253 meters if you run camo net, and your concealment goes up to 201 meters if you're moving, 206 and 233 if you're firing or moving and firing. So you lose a considerable amount of concealment when you fire and move. Reload time is only 5.5 seconds with the gun, so you get a super rate of fire. So every 5.5 seconds you're going to be doing 225 plus damage points. So it's incredible rate of fire. Now, in terms of looking at the armor profile of this tank, it doesn't have any armor, right? So you're probably thinking, okay, well then, can I really go hold down on this? Well, you can, because if you look at the gun mantlet, it takes up nearly the entire turret. The gun mantle can't be penned. So of course, if you get into a position where you can only show your turret and not expose any of your hull, you can go hull down. If you need to expose even the top of your hull, then I wouldn't recommend it, because as you can see, it has no armor. So while this is a fantastic tank, you need to be aware of its limitations. And its limitations are mainly to do with this complete lack of armor. So almost everything can pen you with HE, especially from behind. But because you're playing at tier 6, you need to be very careful of KV2, SU100, and if you're up tiered, Smasher, SU152, etc. They can one-shot you. I've one-shotted many of these tanks in my Smasher or KV2. You need to be very, very careful. Do not move out into exposed parts of the map if you are unaware of where the big guns are on the opposite team. because your game can be over before it begins. So in terms of tactics, use the speed of this tank to get into position, use that rate of fire then to just farm damage. When you drop adrenaline, this thing is just a DPM monster. Use that engine to get into positions, because the power to weight ratio is so good, you can get into positions that some tanks can't get into, and then just farm damage. And enjoy playing this tank, because as I said, historically this is one of the most significant tanks or TDs of World War II, and is the most effective fighting vehicle produced by the Americans in World War II, with the best kill to loss ratio of any vehicle they produced. And what's really great now is that this tank in Blitz reflects its historic significance, because it wasn't before this update quite as fearsome as it was historically. Now it is just as fearsome in Blitz as it was on the battlefields of World War II. Now, if Wargaming can do the same thing with the Tiger, I think we'd all be happy, right? Because the Tiger in Blitz doesn't reflect in any way the fearsome fighting machine that was the Tiger of World War II, that struck literal fear into the hearts of its enemies. But now the Hellcat here is not just Hellcat by name, but also Hellcat by nature, and should strike fear into its enemies with that DPM, mobility, and that gun handling. Gun handling is excellent. As I said, you're looking at tier 9 gun handling and mobility on a tier 6 TD. We'll have a look at some gameplay here. It's Canal, and it is a sniper tanker game. As I've said many times before, you know, when you're running a TD, Master Gunner, Sharpshooter, and of course Sniper Tanker badges are the things you want to get. That shows you have a good TD in your hands. And we're going to look at a Sniper Tanker badge game here in the Hellcat. Luckily not up tiered in this game. You see here what I mean about using the power to weight ratio and the speed to get into a good position. Let's have our first look at the gun in action. There you go, bam, super gun handling. It won't let you down. It's very, very good. Again, we're going to see some other shots coming up here. Another one right into the AMX again. We're going to have a look at, by the way, in a couple of minutes, at a beautiful dispersion shot with the Hellcat. If you're unaware of what dispersion shooting is, it's explained in the Tank Destroyer guide. But in summary, it's a shooting technique developed by pilots in World War I, where they realized that you can't shoot directly at your target because your target's moving very quickly. So you have to aim the gun slightly ahead and anticipate where your shells will arrive, like this. So just to slow it down so you can have a look. So basically you're tracking, and then you try to anticipate where the tank is going to be. Normally I would aim for the front of the tank, but because the front of the tank was disappearing out of view, I aimed for the back of the tank that time, and luckily enough I just caught his ass as he was going on through, getting a beautiful Freddie Mercury round. Who wants to live forever? Certainly not him. Now I'm going to see some nice shots coming up here on the VK. Wasn't sure that one was going to go through, but I wanted to get the wooden structure out of the way so I have a clearer view of the vulnerable parts of the VK. And then I switch up to APCR. My view on APCR and other Pramo is that it's in the game for a reason. Now, you do have some snobs in Blitz who will tell you that, you know, you shouldn't, I don't need to fire Pramo and all that. Well, my view on that is if you didn't need to fire Pramo, it wouldn't be in the game, right? One of my philosophies of Blitz is that you should make as many shots as you fire pen as often as you can. If that requires firing Pramo, so be it. And that's what it's there for, you know. And actually, you know, people say you waste credits. You don't really, because it's a false economy. If you win more, you get more credits, right? You can go through games. If you go through games and don't win, you're not going to get any credits, right? If you fire Pramo and win, you're still going to net out positive on the credits. So, you know, so it's also like when you're trying to farm credits, you know, people don't want to use consumables or provisions. You know, again, it's a false economy. Always max out the performance of your tank, because the more you win, the more credits you get. You can see here, nothing spectacular in this gameplay. Just good, solid gameplay. Playing this TD to its strengths, moving around the map, getting into that position early, using that good mobility and a good gun handling, gun index to deliver pretty decent damage, and of course, most importantly, sniper tanker badge. As we said before, Confederate sniper tanker badges, these are sharpshooter and master gunner. These are the type of accolades you want to get when you're in a TD. That shows that the TD is effective and you're playing it well. And you can see there, sniper tanker, high caliber. Again, high caliber, you know, in Confederate, there are things that show that your TD is being effective and that you have an effective TD in your hands. And believe me, guys, since the buff, this thing is, it's possibly OP now. It's really, or it's definitely as close to it as Tech 3 tanks get. It's really fantastic. I think in the course of shooting this, I think I played 8 games. I think I lost 1. I think my average damage would have been something like 2,000, 2,500, maybe. I'm not sure exactly. But definitely doing 2 to 3k per game wasn't a problem in this tank, because that rate of fire is just phenomenal. So let's have a recap of this fantastic TD. So it's a super TD. As I said, it's definitely borderline OP, if not OP, and definitely as close as Tech 3 tanks get to being OP. It's super now. Mobility is just great. That rate of fire is fantastic. 5.5 second reload, dropping 225 up to 275 DP per round. Lovely. The armor, of course, is 0, except for the mantlet, of course, as we discussed. So that does give you that hold down option if you can just expose the turret. And the great thing about this buff is that now Blitz reflects the history of this tank, and how effective a TD it was during World War II. It is now equally effective within Blitz, and that's great to see for those of us who love the historic aspects of tanking within Blitz. It was a picture of fear in World War II. It struck fear into even German tankers when they met it, and now it is the same in Blitz. And hopefully, you know, if your opponents don't know it's being buffed, they will underestimate what is now a super tank, because with this mobility and the gun index, it is just superb. It is a superlative TD now at tier 6 and holds its own when it's up tiered. Of course, with that caveat that you need to know where those big guns are. Is it the best TD in tier 6 now? In my opinion, probably. Even slightly better than the Jagdpanzer IV, because it has a turret. Not quite as good a rate of fire, but with that mobility and the fact that it has a turret, I think maybe it is slightly better now. So I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it enjoyable. Cheers much. Thanks for watching. And now I guess all that remains for me to say is, as always, pants off.